Cristiano Ronaldo doesn't collect cars to impress people. At this point in his life, there's no audience he needs to convince. Stadiums have already chanted his name, records have already been broken, and trophies have already filled the shelves. The cars came later, not as the goal, but as the byproduct of a career built on obsession, discipline, and relentless self-belief. What makes Ronaldo's garage fascinating isn't just the price tags or the badge names. It's how clearly the collection mirrors his personality. Each car marks a moment, a transfer, a title, a personal milestone, frozen in carbon fiber and steel. And that's why this collection stands apart from the usual celebrity garages. This isn't a chaotic pile of expensive toys. It's a timeline of success, carefully curated over nearly 2 decades at the top of world football. If you enjoy looking beyond the headlines and understanding why collections like this exist, not just what's inside them, you'll want to stay with us. Because to understand Ronaldo's most extreme hypercars, you first have to understand where it all started. That takes us back to the early days, when the cars were fast, flashy, but still very human. Early success, early rewards. Long before Bugattis entered the picture, Cristiano Ronaldo was already rewarding himself, just on a different scale. In his Manchester United years, as his profile exploded and his first Ballon d'Or came into view, Ronaldo's garage began to take shape, with cars that reflected ambition rather than excess. One of the earliest standouts was his Ferrari F430. At the time, it wasn't just a supercar, it was the supercar. Powered by a naturally aspirated V8 and styled by Pininfarina, the F430 represented the arrival. For a young footballer stepping into global superstardom, it was a declaration that he had made it, and that he expected to go even further. Around the same period, Ronaldo added a Bentley Continental GT, a car that blended performance with refinement. This wasn't about track times or noise. It was about presence, quiet confidence, the kind of car you drive when you're already known, not when you're trying to be noticed. These early purchases tell you something important. Ronaldo didn't jump straight to extremes. His collection evolved alongside his career. As his responsibilities grew, so did his taste, shifting from pure flash to cars that balanced comfort, image, and everyday usability. That balance becomes even clearer when you look at the cars he actually used day to day. Daily drivers of a global icon. Despite the hypercar headlines, much of Ronaldo's garage is surprisingly practical, at least by his standards. Like many top-level footballers, he's had long-standing relationships with manufacturers, particularly Audi and Mercedes-Benz, which means several of his cars came through club partnerships rather than impulse purchases. Models like the Audi RS7 and Porsche 911. Turbo S reflect this perfectly. They're brutally fast, technologically advanced, and understated enough to blend into daily life without screaming for attention. The RS7, in particular, strikes that sweet spot between supercar acceleration and executive comfort, ideal for someone constantly moving between training grounds, airports, and family time. Even his SUVs follow the same logic. High-performance Mercedes AMG models give him space, security, and power without sacrificing luxury. These are cars designed to be lived with, not just photographed. And then there's the outlier, the Chevrolet Camaro. Compared to the rest of the garage, it's almost modest. But that's exactly why it fits. It's raw, mechanical, and unapologetically old school. Proof that even with access to the rarest machines on Earth, Ronaldo still appreciates driving for the sake of driving. But practicality only explains part of the story. Because as his career reached its absolute peak, the car stopped being about balance and started becoming about dominance. Ferrari, Lamborghini, and the taste for drama. As Ronaldo's career accelerated, his cars followed suit. This was the phase where emotions started to matter just as much as performance. and nothing delivers drama quite like Ferrari and Lamborghini. One of the most telling additions was the Lamborghini Aventador. It wasn't subtle, and it was never meant to be. The scissor doors, the naturally aspirated V12, the fighter jet styling, it matched Ronaldo's larger-than-life presence perfectly. This was a car built to be seen, and Ronaldo leaned into that unapologetically. Ferrari, on the other hand, represented something different. Where Lamborghini was about spectacle, Ferrari was about pedigree. Cars like the Ferrari F12 TDF and later the Monza SP1 weren't just fast, they were statements of access. These are cars that Ferrari doesn't sell to just anyone, no matter how much money they have. You need history, loyalty, and status within the brand. The Monza SP1 in particular marked a turning point. Built as part of Ferrari's Icona series and limited to a tiny production run, it stripped away windshields and rooflines in favor of pure sensation. It wasn't practical, it wasn't comfortable, and it didn't pretend to be either. It existed purely for the experience, something that resonated deeply with an athlete whose entire career has been about pushing limits. By this point, Ronaldo's garage was no longer about variety. It was about intent. Every car had a purpose, and the ceiling kept rising. That upward trajectory didn't stop with Italy. At a certain level, speed alone isn't enough. What starts to matter is how a car feels when it's driven hard. And that's where track-focused machines enter the picture. The McLaren Senna is a perfect example. Named after one of the most intense drivers in motorsport history, it's a car that sacrifices comfort for capability without apology. Everything about it exists for lap times, massive aero, exposed carbon, brutal feedback. It's not a car you casually take to dinner. It's a car you respect. Enter Bugatti. Power at a different scale. But the moment Bugatti enters the story, everything changes. Bugatti doesn't compete with Ferrari or Lamborghini in the traditional sense. It operates in a different universe, where engineering borders on obsession and cost becomes almost irrelevant. When Ronaldo added his first Bugatti to the collection, it marked a shift from elite to untouchable. Cars like the Veyron Grand Sport Vitesse and later the Chiron aren't defined by one statistic. They're overwhelming in every direction. Quad turbocharged W16 engines, four-wheel drive systems built to handle aircraft-level speeds, and interiors that blend luxury with brutality. For Ronaldo, Bugatti made sense. These cars are relentless. They dominate through excess and precision at the same time. Just like his playing style at its peak, they leave no room for doubt. What's also important is how rarely these cars are actually seen on the road. Bugattis live most of their lives hidden away, emerging only for special moments. That exclusivity is part of the appeal. And yet, even Bugatti wouldn't end up being the final word. Because once you've reached the summit of performance, the next evolution isn't speed anymore. It's legacy. The one-offs and the cars. People argue about when Ronaldo's collection is discussed online. This is where the rumors usually explode. The truly rare cars, the alleged one-offs. The vehicles so exclusive that even ownership becomes part of the mystery. Take the Bugatti 110. Inspired by the EB 110 and limited to just 10 units worldwide, it's one of the most aggressive modern Bugattis ever built. Ronaldo reportedly acquired one during his Juventus era, and sightings of the car, often driven by trusted security rather than Ronaldo himself, only added to its mystique. At this level, even proximity to a car becomes news. Then there's the most controversial name attached to his collection, La Voiture Noire. For years, Ronaldo has been linked to the car that briefly held the title of the most expensive new vehicle ever sold. Bugatti officially confirmed the car was built as a one-off, but ownership details were never publicly disclosed in full. Ronaldo's association with it has been fueled by social media appearances and branding ties rather than formal confirmation. making it one of the most debated cars in celebrity automotive culture. And that's the key difference here. At this stage, Ronaldo's collection doesn't just exist in garages. It exists in conversation. Some cars are fully verified. Others live in that gray area where privacy, exclusivity, and myth overlap. That ambiguity isn't accidental. It's part of what keeps the collection fascinating. Because when you operate at this level, even uncertainty becomes a form of status. Why Ronaldo's collection is so valuable. What pushes Ronaldo's car collection toward the upper end of 9 figures isn't just price tags, it's positioning. Many of his cars sit at cultural turning points, early hypercars that defined new performance standards, limited production models released before manufacturers shifted strategies, cars that represent the end of eras, not just the beginning of trends. There's also timing. Ronaldo often acquired cars before values exploded, especially with limited Ferraris and early Bugattis. As regulations tightened and electrification accelerated, naturally aspirated engines and extreme internal combustion hypercars became finite resources. Scarcity did the rest. Provenance matters too. A Ferrari owned by Ronaldo isn't just a Ferrari. It carries a narrative. It reflects moments in his career, championships, transfers, and personal milestones. That connection adds a layer collectors can't replicate. Most importantly, there's restraint. Despite his wealth, Ronaldo didn't chase every new release. His collection evolved deliberately. That selectiveness is why it feels curated rather than chaotic, and why its value keeps compounding rather than stagnating. If you enjoyed this deep dive and want more stories that go beyond surface-level flexing, collections with meaning, history, and context, make sure you're subscribed. Let us know in the comments whose garage we should explore next. Because the cars are impressive, but the stories behind them are what really matter.